So it is our last day in Sweden, and yesterday we basically drove only on highway, so I didn't record any of the rides. But today I've got my camera on, and hopefully we can avoid highway as much as possible and go on smaller roads. In the morning we started right here in Uppsala, where we spent the night, and we're looking at the runestone. Google doesn't do very good translation of Swedish or rune, so I can't be sure, but I believe it's a memory of father and son, and made by their mother and sister or something like that. There's an information tablet next to it, but it's all in Swedish and I can't read Swedish, and the Google really does not do that good of a job translating it. followed up with a bit more modern ruins. So that's a St. Olaf's church ruin, and there's supposed to be another one in this small town, so we'll try to look it up if it's also worth seeing, and we'll see it anyway. If it's worth seeing, you will also see it, and then we'll continue on towards Stockholm, where there are also some runestones that are pretty big, and would like to see them. And zoom, just like that, we are at St. Peter's church ruins, which, as I read from information flyer or something on the fence, that this is one of the oldest stone buildings in Sigtuna, which is the name of the town we're in, if I'm not mistaken. The village or town was about 100 years old when this church was built. So 11th century, did I say that? Yeah, 11th century, end of the Viking era. And also this church seems to be under some conservation or restoration process, that it has fences around it and no one is allowed in, which is unfortunate, but again, plenty to see from the outside also. So we saw a second set of the runestones. These ones were near Stockholm. We just happened to butt in to a tourist group, so we heard the guide speaking about those runes and the history of them, and it was quite interesting. Hearing about the families who they were raised by and for, and why they have been moved from their original location, because they used to be further down by the road. Anyways, we'll have to navigate back through some fields and cow pastries, because my map showed the runes to be in a different spot than they actually are. So there's quite a walk to the bike. We are now back on the ferry, leaving Sweden. And this is it for this trip. It has been fun, and I definitely urge everyone to take a chance and do traveling holiday, and especially motorcycle trip. Thank you very much for watching this series of my very first motorcycle trip. Now I will just briefly go over what we did during this trip and what we saw during the trip. So the very first day we rode from Tallinn to Stockholm with a ferry, and then the following day the actual motorcycle riding began. We headed towards Norway, and in one day we went across Sweden. We made stops at Örebro to see this lovely castle, also in Karlstad to see this very old stone bridge, and then the very favorite of mine, just before the night, we saw the car cemetery, which is some say it's an art project, some say it's whatever. Anyways, I really liked it, and that's one thing I recommend, that you should see if you're into either old cars or things that are rusty, old, rotten, anything like of the sort. So definitely try to check it out if you're in Sweden. The following day we headed to Norway, and the first stop was at a fortification, which was at the top of a hill, and it really for a moment seemed as we were already in high mountains. The view was great from there. And then we headed towards Hamar and visited a railway museum, and we actually managed to ride an old steam train in there. And for the next morning we headed across the lake, or to the other side of the lake, and rode the very old steamboat. Which is the oldest steamboat in regular route, well, or that still rides a regular route. And from there we headed to mountains to see the magnificent views. And before actually reaching the Trollsland, we stopped at a small place, if I'm not mistaken, it was called Lom, and saw this very old wooden church. Now, that was very interesting. Again, we were too late to get in, but there was plenty to see on the outside also. The day after that we went to the mountains, to the twisty roads, and of course the famous Troll's Ladder, which spooked me a bit because of the very narrow turns, and I wasn't quite at home with my bike yet. It was basically the first full season with this bike. After Troll's Ladder we saw the Atlantic Highway, and that was surprisingly short. It was pretty much what I expected from the view. It was the long bridges and everything, but when you look at the aerial photos in the internet, it seems so big, so long, but actual fact is that with legal speeds I rode through it in less than 10 minutes. Then I had bacalao in Kristiansund, and that was the salted dried fish stew. The day after that we headed towards Trondheim, which was the shortest riding day, only about 2 hours. That was just to rest a bit from riding, and of course to see the Trondheim town. We saw some forts there, and both old and new. And after Trondheim there was hell. Now here's something most of you probably don't know about the word hell. It also has meaning in Estonian, and the meaning is either tender or affectionate. So this was meaning enough for one word to name this series after it. And also it was pretty much the turning point in the whole trip. From there we headed back towards Stockholm and stopped at the caves on the way. Hoverberg's cave we actually went in, and then there was also the supposedly second largest cave complex in Europe, where we couldn't get in. That was in Hölik, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, in the east shore at Sweden. Not very far actually from Stockholm already. On the way to Stockholm we saw several museums. The Emergency Services Museum, definitely worth a visit. And near Stockholm also the Motorcycle Museum, which was very, very interesting. And if you're watching this series you might find it interesting also, so put it in the list. Now, when shooting so much video, you will definitely end up with shots that you're not going to use, and even bloopers. And even when making this video, suddenly there were sirens near the next house, and the whole of the area was filled with smoke, and there was police and fire trucks and whatnot. I couldn't even understand what was going on there. Anyway, here are some clips from the trip that you might find amusing, and let them end this series. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thing I noticed here in Greece. Tahad kuulsaks saada, jah?